Hi, I'm Eleanor Dallaway, editor of Infosecurity magazine, and I'm here with Michelle Johnson Cobb, VP of Marketing with Skybox Security. So thank you for being with us today, Michelle.
Thank you very much.
My first question is, for those of our viewers that aren't familiar with Skybox Security, could you please tell us a little bit about what you do?
Certainly. Well, we are a software company that specializes in solving one of the problems that companies face and find very difficult to solve, and that is really understanding their security risks and coming up with ways to find them, prioritize them, and deal with them every day. And that's really our key approach, is to help those large organizations understand and deal with those risks.
Sure. So what would you say are the key vulnerability management challenges facing enterprises and businesses today?
Sure. Well, the number one challenge is that organizations are really troubled by having to prioritize vulnerability information so they can deal with it effectively. They get a lot of information from sources that may have tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of vulnerabilities, but the question is, what do I go fix today?
Yeah.
So that's the number one challenge. And number two one is really linking that in with their various processes so they can deal with that in an effective manner. So understanding and prioritizing those, and then figuring out a way to remediate what's really important to fix.
And like all security, sometimes failures do happen.
Right.
So when do vulnerability management failures happen, and how can that be avoided?
Sure. Well, one of the things that always is a problem is, number one, making sure it gets done. So you'd be surprised at how many companies think they have a solid vulnerability management process and really find that they're only collecting information on a very infrequent basis. Perhaps every week or 2 weeks, or even at a month or every 60 days, they're scanning critical systems and then trying to understand what to do about them. When you start looking at the whole end-to-end process, it can take 2 to 4 months from the time a vulnerability is discovered to the time it's finally remediated.
Which is too long.
And it's just way too long when risks are discovered every day and new threats come up all the time.
So how can you make those processes succeed then, so that the vulnerability management is doing its job?
Sure. Well, there are 3 critical areas. One is to make sure that you're actually identifying all of the vulnerability information that you can and keeping it updated. And that really requires taking a different approach to vulnerability discovery. For example, today's traditional active scanners often can be disruptive in an environment. So many times customers are afraid to use them on a daily basis, or unable to, because they might disrupt a critical production system. And so instead they default to longer periods of time, which means that they're not working with the latest information anyway. So that's one step. The second is to make sure that they are prioritizing the information in a way that makes sense for their network.
Right.
So oftentimes we find, when we do our analysis of vulnerabilities, that really 1 to 2% of the vulnerabilities are the ones you actually care about and need to address, but finding that 1 to 2% is the real difficulty. It has to make sense in your network. And then third, you have to do something about it. So even if you have the information and you know how to prioritize, if it's not linked in with critical processes in the organization, it just won't get done in a timely manner. So linking to remediation activities, or knowing how to decide between remediation options like patching or shielding, is critical.
So finally then, what one tip would you give to any information security professionals watching this video on how to handle their vulnerability management? What's the top priority?
Sure. I'd say the top priority is think about it as reinventing your program. It's just not going to be enough in this kind of threat environment to make incremental changes, 10% or 20% improvement. You really need to change what you're doing at every step. And that means looking at alternatives for the way that you find vulnerability information, looking for alternatives to those disruptive scanners that may be causing you problems. You need to find better ways to prioritize given the context of your network and your controls and the threats that are out there. And you really need to link it in an integrated fashion with everything that you're doing. So it's time to reinvent the process.
Some good advice. So Skybox Security are exhibiting at Infosecurity Europe this year. So what are you up to at the show, and where can people find you?
Certainly. Well, we're showing off, number one, Skybox Risk Control, which is one of our newest solutions that incorporates some of the vulnerability management capabilities that we've just talked about, and just won an award last night.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations,
Yes,
and thank you for talking to me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.